white person, they could say, I can prove America's a white supremacist country because I have the minutes. I was at the meeting when we all said the N-word. I was there. I didn't say it, but I was there. They can't do that because they weren't at the meeting because there was no meeting. So they have to pretend there was a meeting that everyone else was at that they weren't at. And they're the only good white person in America proving it. The problem with this is the only good white person in America, with air quotes around it, is like 50 million people, all of which are in all the major institutions. So like the only good white person in America is every single person in every seat of every boardroom in every corporation in the country, every Fortune 500 corporation, in every media outlet that's corporately owned, which is most of them, in all the councils of government and all the places where all the important people sit. Those are the ones who aren't in on the conspiracy. But yet the people who have no power it makes no sense. Because the New York Times is on your side, but somehow you're the outlier pointing out that the whole society is racist? What? It's like every single person in the country is pointing at one person and saying, this country's racist because that guy's racist. Or something. I don't know. It baffles the mind. Tucker, come back. His show sucks without him, by the way.
And it's hit or miss with him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Speaking of the narrative of white supremacy, the New York Times has deployed what they're calling the 1619 Project, because we have reached the 400th anniversary of the time the very first African slaves were brought to the United States. And so they're making this interactive thing to show how actually slavery was amazing for America, and it's the reason America is successful, because if you look around, you'll see that all of our great monuments are actually made physically out of cotton.
Yeah.
And the South was so economically powerful that it was able to steamroll the Union during the war.
Yeah.
And most of the dominant economies in the world are also slave-based economies.
Yeah,
because
which
slavery is what made this country rich.
Yeah, and which is why that all the countries that still have slavery are richer than us.
Yeah.
Because even though there's more slaves in the world today than ever before, the ones that were in America are the only ones that mattered. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what the idea is, but they basically said the real founding of America was 1619, because that was the first time that one of the people that were being held in slavery in America was black. Whoa. And that was the beginning of everything. It's so weird that the liberals are now the people making the case, which is, by the way, been totally debunked, that slavery is the best.
Please don't use the word debunk. I'm sorry. I just can't take it seriously.
What am I supposed to say?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Smashed. Okay. Owned.
That liberals, people who call themselves liberals, are making the case that has been totally smashed 100 times, that slave labor is the key to economic prosperity. Slave labor made America great, which is, as everyone knows, why we were at our richest in 1860, and it's just been downhill since then. Remember in 1860 when they had iPhones, and now we just send telegrams? Because without slave labor, everything's just gone to pot. They're so rabid about this. This is, again, my point from earlier. The central defining feature of them is that they hate capitalism. They're trying to blame slavery on capitalism, which is a fucking joke. But they're going to try it, and they're going to get huge numbers of people who never thought of this before to believe it very soon. So, so central is it that they hate capitalism that they will go to the point of defending slavery as the key to driving economic prosperity, which is a very dangerous argument to make, because once you've said, hey, the only way to get rich is through slavery, I mean, people want to be rich. So I don't understand where they think this is going to lead them. It's so stupid, and we're just to be spared nothing. This is an ongoing thing, the 1619 Project. Aren't they a newspaper? Since when is something that happened 400 years ago news?
Oh, let's not forget, though, I might as well bring this up. Reason Magazine, their editorial board, actually, they loved it. What they didn't like, though, was its anti-capitalist bias. I'm sure that the New York Times will be devastated to know that they only got a 4 out of 5 review from Reason because of, well, it was a bit too hard on free markets.
You know, I love that poison apple that I got from that evil witch. My only complaint is that it was poisonous. Well, that's the fucking point. The whole point of it is to be anti-capitalist. That's what it is. If you take that away, there's nothing left. Talking about slavery in America. That's what's left. We've been doing that. Is there anyone in this country who, if you said to them, did you know there was slavery in America? They would say, what? In America? Are you sure? What are you talking about, Willis? Everyone knows.
You know, I love how, Dan, I just want to point out, you did not say it the way...
I didn't say it the way you said it.
You didn't say what you talking about, Willis, but in fact, you said it like a white person would say it.
What are you talking about, Willis?
Golly, Willis, what the devil are you going on about? Speaking of journalists finding racism, let's talk about Chris Cuomo. Chris Cuomo is the younger, slightly less successful brother of New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo and the son of former New York State Governor Mario Cuomo. It's really interesting how that works out. So Chris Cuomo is a correspondent on CNN. Take everything you need to from a correspondent on CNN. Chris Cuomo is Italian. He has been called by Rush Limbaugh and others Fredo. For those who haven't seen, Fredo was the dumb brother in the Godfather movies, right?
Yeah.
So to call Chris Cuomo Fredo is to call him a dumb Italian stereotype.
Which is, by the way, hilarious because it's so accurate because his older brother is the governor of
New York, and he's a
their father was once the governor of New York, correct?
Yep.
So
he really is the Jeb Bush of the Cuomo politics.
So his brother is Andrew?
Yeah.
And so Mario Cuomo was the governor of New York. Now he has multiple sons, one of whom becomes the governor of New York, the other of whom gets some Mickey Mouse talk show somewhere.
Yep.
He's sent to pick people up at the airport. He's Fredo. It's perfect.
Rush Limbaugh calls Chris Cuomo Fredo on his show. He calls him Fredo more often than he calls him his actual name.
Yeah.
And so there was a video where a guy who obviously was conservative was talking to, well, the video doesn't show exactly what the guy said, but the video shows Chris Cuomo's incredibly angry reaction to being called Fredo, where he's chesting up to this guy saying, you called me Fredo, you insulted me to my face, and now you're weaseling out of it. And the guy's like, I really thought that was your name. And at first, I thought, listen, there's no way you thought his name was really Fredo. But I realized if you had never actually watched CNN and you only listened to Rush Limbaugh, you might think that. Yeah. But what was really funny was how Chris Cuomo was acting. Because he was getting very heated, very angry, because from his perspective, this guy had called him, had insulted him to his face in public, and then was now trying to act the victim and saying, why are you so mad I called you Fredo? Which will just make anybody upset. And now I'm wondering if it's just like a New Yorker trait or if that's just the way any normal person acts. And so he said, if you call me Fredo again, if you want to fight me, I'll throw you down the staircase and break your legs. That's a vicious Italian stereotype. Now Trevor Noah pointed this out.
He threatened to break his leg?
Yeah.
That a vicious Italian stereotype?
Exactly. You're Fredo is a hateful slur that stereotypes violent, dumb Italian.
It's a vicious Italian stereotype there.
And if you call me that,
I'll just sleep with the fishes. You talk to me like that again.
Now, I just want to point out that Trevor Noah would never dare, if this irony were to manifest itself in any other occasion, Trevor Noah would never dare point it out.
Oh, yeah, like if Chris Christie said the same thing. If Chris Christie said to someone, that's a vicious Italian stereotype, I'll break your fucking legs. Really?
Oh, no, that's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking we're another ethnic group. Right.
Oh. I can't think of a stereotype, though, that would... You call them a name that's very stereotypical of that ethnic group.
Yeah. And in particular, you call them one that, suggested they're violent and dumb. And then they then react violently and say something dumb. You would not see a Trevor Noah sketch about like, hey, you called this guy such and such, and then he acted like a such and such. Like, excuse me? That would never happen. Only for Italians, seemingly, and maybe for Irish people. Chris Cuomo was very upset, but then he said something that was particularly interesting. He said that Fredo was like the N-word for Italians. Now, you will notice...
Did he say what word that was?
Yeah, exactly. He said the word Fredo. He didn't say what the N-word was. But the thing is, this isn't the first time that he's done this. Chris Cuomo also said... he said that fake news was the N-word for journalists. And again, you'll notice he said the words fake news, but I really want to live in... I want to live in the world Chris Cuomo lives in that is just filled with alternative N-words. I mean, he's just churning them out.
You know what's funny, Jamal, is that there's only one N-word that someone could call you, but Chris Cuomo, there's multiple. There's two, because he's a journalist and he's Italian.
Okay.
So you're black. I don't know if there's any N-word for college students or economists or New Yorkers, but...
frankly, New Yorker is an insult in and of itself.
Yeah, right? So... But if I called him Fredo, that's just as bad as me calling you a word that I'm not even going to say in jest. Or if I called him fake news, again, that's just as bad. But there's only one thing I could call you that could be that bad and harmful and hurtful. What fucking world does he live in? I feel like if you said that to any black person, this list of words, if you say any of them to me, it's just as bad as saying the N-word to a black person. That's when we're 100% on that poll would say, no, it's not.
I mean, I agree, though. Like, thing is, I agree Fredo is a slur, for sure. I would actually say that Fredo is not equivalent to calling someone the N-word. I would say, and actually this might be worse, I would say that, okay, so the idea that Fredo is a dumb Italian from a movie. So we would need to think of a dumb black guy from a movie, and that would be Bubba from Forrest Gump. In its own way, Fredo is worse than the N-word, at least in my personal reaction. I mean, if somebody called me the N-word, I would just kind of laugh and shrug it off. If somebody called me Bubba, I might fight them.
Really?
Yeah, I think actually that would be worse. Because the N-word is just, it's funny, I'm saying Bubba and not the N-word. Yeah, because the N-word at this point, like, it's been around for like 200 years, and it's in like songs and shit. There's nobody rapping comparing themselves to Bubba from Forrest Gump.
Yeah, it has not been harnessed as it's not yet had its power taken away as a term of endearment.
Yeah, I mean, Bubba was a dumb, big-lipped black guy from, like, Alabama. Like, you can't reclaim that. It's just gone. That's just there. Tom Hanks put that into the world, and the only reason we're okay with Zemeckis and Hanks doing that, giving us that character, is because Forrest was also... who was 1 point shy of being in normal classes.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah. So Fredo...
Although, for the record, Forrest Gump was smarter than Bubba.
Yes. And I believe Dave Chappelle pointed that out, which is who could be dumber than Forrest Gump? Apparently Forrest Gump's best friend.
Yeah, which is pretty fucked up when you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely Fredo is really... more like calling someone Bubba. And yeah, if somebody called me Bubba and then raised their hands like, I thought that was your real name, I think that would make me a lot more upset. So I'm still going to laugh at Chris Cuomo's misfortune.
I will say, one of my best friends, his father was once called Fredo years ago. The man who was called Fredo by his wife, was compared to Fredo while watching The Godfather. And they got in quite an argument over it. And I remember at the time, the way he described it was similar to as if someone had just called him the N-word. That he got that upset. Like, he got very upset. Yeah. So, and
I mean, it's an insult. Like, it's obviously a racialized insult. Like,
yes, it's a racialized insult.
It's not a slur, but
it's an ethnic insult.
Yeah.
But of all the ethnic insults, there's one that sits above the rest.
Yeah. The
like
N-word
the king of ethnic insults.
Like there are insults to black people that are like Bubba that suggest even worse things than the N-word.
Yes.
Right. I mean, there are things you could call me that say even worse things about me as a black man than the N-word does. But somehow, like, do you think that there's some kind of like price inflation going on with the N-word? is a fixed exchange rate, and the credit markets on